Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is a brand new week of streams with your president. It's also Veterans Day, so for all of you veterans out there, happy Veterans Day. Hopefully you guys got some free meals or free coffees or something, or even the day off. That would be even better, right? A nice good long day pass would be fantastic as well. But yeah, so we are back to Tuesday. We have a whole slew of content ready to go. The news just keeps on delivering. Let me tell you. I mean, we called it weeks ago that the longer this government shutdown went on, that it was either A, going to end with democratic capitulation, or B, it's going to be the new normal and it's going to be a further consolidation of power. Well, it seems the first shot was fired, and it was democratic capitulation. So we will be getting into that today and much, much more. Thank you all for joining us today. And hello, Anna. Let's jump into it. If you see me stuffing my face in a bit, it's because my appetite has been really weird today. So we're going to start off nice and mild, nice and easy, with 50-year mortgages. Yes, you heard me correctly. The Trump administration is trying to propose that a 50-year mortgage is a better solution for affordable home ownership rather than, I don't know, not having inflated housing prices, reducing the cost of rent, so on and so forth. Now, before we hit play, and I'm sure it's going to be covered here, mortgages are loans that accrue interest just like any other loan, right? All loans accrue interest. The weird thing is, though, most loans accrue interest over time and aren't front-loaded. What does that mean? That means a mortgage is one of those loans where you pay the interest up front over the course of the loan, meaning the amount of principal you pay is this itty-bitty amount, and then most of your payment is interest. Okay? So when they say your loan is going to get split up over 30 years, that means 360 payments. So if you had a $360,000 loan, which I don't think most of us can afford that, 360 payments would be $1,000, right? You would think that. You would think that it would just be $1,000. But the problem is, it's got to be more than that $1,000 to cover the interest. So what do? They front load it. That's where the APR comes into play. And again, without getting too boring into the math details, you are paying maybe $100 worth of principal even on a $360,000 loan because you're paying that much more in interest. That much more in interest. It's insane how much interest you pay, and that's just on a 30-year note or on a 20-year note. Now imagine a 50-year note. All of that accumulated interest over the course of 50 years, a lifetime. It's egregious. But let's hear it from the experts.
The numbers and determine that a 50-year fixed rate mortgage would lower monthly payments, but overall a person would be paying a larger grand total because of the higher interest rate. So for example, if you took out a 50-year mortgage for $200,000 at a 6% interest rate, your monthly principal and interest payments would be just over $1,000. However, the interest that you would pay during the lifespan of the loan would exceed $430,000.
That's just the interest. But just to be clear, we're talking
grand total because of the higher interest rate. So for example, if you took out a 50-year mortgage for
$200,000 loan, that is the money you borrowed. You borrowed $200,000 to buy a house. Now, 5 years ago, that was a really freaking nice house. Nowadays, that's barely a starter home. But without that little tidbit, $200,000 at 6%. And if you see it right here, $430,000 total interest paid. You are paying more than double the loan amount in interest over the course of 50 years. That's theft. That's just straight up theft. Like there is no justification. And then in 50 years, you're going to want to justify that your house is now worth $630,000. Well, if your shitty starter home is worth $630,000 50 years from now, let's not even talk about climate change and everything else. That means the inflated cost of living is that a starter home is now $630,000. Do you see how this spirals out of control rapidly?
$1,000 at a 6% interest rate, your monthly principal and interest payments would be just over $1,000. However, the interest that you would pay during the lifespan of the loan would exceed $430,000. If you took out a 15-year mortgage for $200,000 at a 4.5% rate, your monthly principal and interest payments would be around $1,500. Even though it is a little more cash up front, the interest that you would pay over the life of that loan would be around $100,000. That is $330,000 less than a 50-year mortgage.
Now, but that's something that is worth pointing out too. You're still paying 50% of the entire loan amount, 50% in interest. That is still an obscene amount. Again, it's 4.5% APR, right? That ends up being 50% of the total loan amount. Because what people think 4.5% APR means is that, oh, I'm only going to pay 4.5% interest on my $200,000 loan. That's going to be $9,000. No big deal. Wrong. That's damn near. It's not quite 9,000 year over year over year, but it kind of it almost feels that way. Plus, how are you going to get a 4.5% interest loan when no bank is offering 4.5% interest rates to you at all, right? So the example that was given is also not an apples to apples example, because those aren't the interest rates that we're getting. But this just goes to show that the lending market for housing is contributing directly to the lack of people being able to afford housing in the first place, never mind the inflated cost of housing to begin with. So, what a way to start the stream, I know, but I think here's the...
In an attempt to make home buyers...
This is going to, I believe, discuss more where it came from and the ideas behind it. The math ain't mathin'. It isn't mathing. But let's hear as to why this stupidity is upon us.
More affordable, President Trump floated this idea of a 50-year mortgage in a social media post. The purpose of a longer-term fixed-rate mortgage would be to lower the monthly payment for homeowners. The longer the term of the loan, the smaller the principal needed each month to pay it off in full. Using the latest median sale price of a home from September, $415,200.
So, place your bets. A $200,000 home at 6% accumulated $430,000 of interest over the course of 50 years. The median sale price of a home is $415,200, which is more than double. So you can reasonably assume that whatever math is about to math, you might end up paying $1 million in interest over the same level of the loan, and including the principal. So you will have paid $1.415 million over the course of 50 years for this house. That's assuming, again, that in 50 years we'll have a country, and climate change hasn't devastated us, and that the housing market hasn't gone absolutely batshit to where a $1 million home is the new normal or the new median. But let's hear more of the story.
$100, according to the realtors, and the current interest rate of about 6.3%, according to Mortgage News Daily. On a 30-year fixed loan with a 20% down payment.
Okay, because everybody in America has $83,000 to put down. Sure.
The monthly payment of just principal and interest would be $2,056. Now, if you raise the length to 50 years at the same interest rate, that payment would be $1,823, and that's
So the savings isn't even that much. it's about $200 a month. Granted, if you can afford a $415,000 home in the first place, $200 a month probably doesn't affect you. So the people who would actually be benefiting from this are people who can't afford houses in the first place, right? Or who wouldn't need the savings. If you can afford $2,000 a month, you can afford $1,800 a month. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can afford $1,800, another $200 on top of that is really not going to make a difference because your take home, the ideal take home for a house like that would be no more than 50% of your income. So we do 2056 times 2 divided by an average of 65% of your take-home pay for a total salary of $75,000. Now, that's assuming that's the only debt you have. If you're making $75,000, you could theoretically afford this house. And take-home pay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 75,000 gross? No, that seems too low. Hold on, that doesn't make. Hold on, let's try this again. I think I messed up my numbers there. So, per month times 2. Okay, divided by that average taxes. Still coming up with 75,000. Okay, so say you make $75,000 a year, you should be able to afford this payment. You should be able to afford this payment at 6.3% interest, but also with 20% down. Now, if you're making $76,000 a year, how many years would you have to save in order to have $83,000, which is more than a year of your salary? You'd have to save, I'm guessing 5 or 10 years at that salary rate just to maybe have $83,000. And that's assuming, no emergencies or this, that, and the other, right? So not only is this assuming you have $83,000 a month, chances are it's going to be closer to $2,500 because most people will not have $83,000. So let's call it 2,500 times 2 divided by. I think that's why I was confused, because of the $83,000 payment. This makes more sense. You would need, realistically, you'd need to make around $92,300 to actually afford this house without a down payment. Which is 92 versus 75. Is my math wrong? Is it 17,000? That's a $17,000 annual income difference. Like, no regular person is affording that. And let's see. We'll go ahead and
in an attempt to make home buying more affordable,
you'd be in the top 20% of earners. So, like, only the top 20% of earners can realistically afford this house. Like, let's just be very honest about what is being discussed on CNBC here, because this is not a realistic house purchase. The house that I bought in 2020 was $164,000 at the time, and I was paying $1,100 a month with a 3.4% interest rate, and I was making around $74,000 at the time, working my ass off with at least like $10,000 or more in overtime that year, right? So I was working like a dog to afford a $164,000 home with a $75,000 job, which was only $75,000 because of the sheer amount of overtime that I was working. So this is damn near triple the value. Damn near 2.5. 2.5. Let's just call it 2.5. There's no way. There's just no way. There is no way the average American, the median income maker, is going to afford this, because the median income in America, if you include billionaires and multimillionaires, is still only $40,000, right? So what is the median income of American workers? Fuck you and your weekly wage. Okay, thank you. 62,000. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 62,000 a year if you include billionaires and multimillionaires. So the median income is still less than the amount of money that you would need for this monthly payment to get the median priced house. So the median income is not high enough to get the median price. So we're talking about multiple layers of the same problem as if this is somehow going to resolve it. That's just not how that works. That's just not how any of this works.
Savings of
And you're absolutely right,
$233 a
Anna.
month. Homeowners, however, wouldn't build equity as quickly, and that's because their principal payments would be smaller, and the amount of interest that they're paying to lenders would actually be 40% higher.
40%
Homeowners could
higher.
still gain equity through home price appreciation, but home prices have been softening swiftly across the nation this year, with nowhere near the appreciation seen in the years before. Now, even realtors agree that the savings to homeowners would be minimal. Joel Berner, a senior economist at
Well, and we just spent a solid few minutes discussing how the savings are negligible at those levels regardless, and the incomes that would even start benefiting are not the norm in America.
Realtor.com said in a release, this is not the best way to solve housing affordability. The administration would do better to reverse tariff-induced inflation, which is keeping the rates on existing mortgages high. The average age of a typical
When a realtor is talking about trade issues keeping inflation high and that's contributing to housing problems, that's crazy. Because a realtor and foreign trade are nowhere close to the same thing. And the realtor's even saying, bro, you need to stop messing with foreign trade because you are causing problems. That's wild.
First-time buyer in 1991 was 28. By last year, it had reached 38, according to a new report from the National Association of Realtors, whose deputy chief economist called the number, quote, shocking. Then there's the question of what's the mortgage rate? The average rate on the...
I was under the... Oh, okay. The average rate might be 38. I was under the impression, though, that the largest number of home buyers are the boomers. So maybe they're the ones that are buying houses the most, but the average age, which is around my age, actually, is between the young kids and the old folks buying their starter home versus buying their retirement home in this horrendous economy. Okay.
The 15-year fixed mortgage is currently 66 basis points lower than the rate on the 30-year fixed. So this would kind of imply that the rate on the 50-year fixed would be higher. It all depends on investor demand for the product, of course. I spoke with Matthew Graham at Mortgage News Daily. He told me there is not currently a secondary market for these loans, nor would a robust secondary market be cultivated anytime soon. That means that in addition to the extremely low amount of principal paid down in earlier years of the loan, the interest rates would also be quite a bit higher than 30-year loans. He calls that a double whammy for those with any hope of building home equity. Graham also said that...
So, you're going to pay more in interest regardless. Just regardless. It doesn't matter what the interest rate is. It's going to be 20 years worth of accumulated interest more. That's the reality. Secondly, a 30-year loan was supposed to be the best interest rate, and now the 50-year loan is going to be significantly worse than that. Like, do you see how the math ain't mathin'? This is not helping people. This is again, ensuring that housing is going to be priced out of the hands of regular people forever. And if you do end up buying a house with a 50-year mortgage, that you're going to be tied down to that house for literally a lifetime, which is also unrealistic. How many people have moved cities and states just for work because their local economy crumbles or shifts dramatically in just the past 5 years? That is an unrealistic expectation in the current climate of our society. So,
For all practical purposes, the loan would be more like an interest-only loan because very few people would keep a home for 50 years. The real question, though, is can Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac actually do this? Now, analysts say it's possible, but a 50-year mortgage does not currently meet the definition of what is called a qualified mortgage, and that's under the Dodd-Frank Act. It gives investors a backup from Fannie and Freddie if that loan goes bad, as in the homeowner doesn't pay. But regulators were given the authority to change that in order to ensure mortgage affordability. That, however, though, could take a year, according to Jarrett Seaberg of TD Cowen. That's because they need congressional approval.
that whole story was just a dumpster fire of abysmal economic domestic policy. That's all that was. That was 3 minutes and 21 seconds of just really explaining how this is really, really bad policy. And yet, Trump is probably doing laps, patting himself on the back for it. This is what happens when you have a president that doesn't know shit about how normal people live, how much money they make, etc. No, this is what happens when you sell out your country to corporations and private investors and let them run the show. Like that's literally what 80 years of complacency has brought us. Ever since the end of World War II and the end of FDR, we have been in a very complacent country when it comes to economics and politics. So this is 80 years of just straight up complacency in America. And it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. Okay.
Congress has set aside
And on the tone of poor economic decisions and beliefs and values and so on and so forth, Mike Johnson giving up the goose on why they're playing games with SNAP.
specific fund for programs like SNAP for emergencies. And as the judge put it in federal court today, quote, "It's hard for me to understand that this is not an emergency when there's no money and a lot of people are needing their SNAP benefits." I think it's really important to be clear about what Republicans were trying to do here. They were ginning up excuses to actively force 42 million Americans to lose their SNAP benefits when they didn't have to. They were choosing to take food away from 42 million of the poorest Americans while trying to accuse Democrats of what Johnson and Republicans were actually doing. I mean, J.D. Vance actually laid out what was happening really clearly today, believe it or not.
They are trying to take a hostage, and we can't reward that behavior.
Taking a hostage, using food that tens of millions of Americans needed as a hostage to negotiate with. That is what Republicans in Congress are trying to do here. And today, Mike Johnson laid out why. Here was Speaker Johnson earlier today responding to a question about why he wouldn't just move money around to fund SNAP. Take a listen.
Because if you deviate from the goal of reopening the entire government, Chuck Schumer and the radicals over there will continue to play games with people's paychecks, their livelihoods. And if you do just part of this, it will reduce the pressure for them to do all of it.
There you have it. That is the game that Republican leaders are playing here. They are using Americans as leverage. They are trying to purposefully make the shutdown more painful on the poorest Americans, on federal employees, too, to put pressure on Democrats to cave.
Which we covered this last week. I guess this is also an 11-day-old video, so we probably did cover this specifically last week. But it just goes to show that our government is so ineffective that they are literally at the point where they are using human lives, American lives, their voting base's lives, as bargaining chips to maintain power and control over Congress, over the direction of governance in our country, when the governance that they are implementing in the first place is not governing. Literally, the government is shut down. That is the exact opposite of governing. That is literally the exact opposite of governing. And getting to a point where you are literally not governing to claim that your form of governing is better is absolute insanity. And yet here we are. Now, to the point, it does seem as though there is a Senate bill that passes, followed by another discourse with Mike over here concerning the shutdown. So let's go to the Senate bill.
The bill as amended is passed.
Overnight, the Senate officially passing a bill to reopen the government, putting Congress on track to end the longest shutdown in American history.
This has been a very long road, quite literally the longest shutdown in history. I am very, very happy to be able to say that we are coming to the end.
The bill now heads to the House, members scrambling back to Washington after being out of town for more than 50 days.
Congress, the House, wasn't even in fucking Washington. They just went home and were on their donor phone calls, were having sex with their mistresses, threatening illegals, having sex with their gay Havana pool boys while hating on, the queer community. Whatever the case may be. Again, I actually went out of my way to create a policy platform. Oh, I thought that was the issues page. Sorry. About what we should do during a government shutdown. And I apologize for the lack of embellishment on it. But here's the thing. Accountability. All members of Congress, regardless of chamber, shall be immediately removed from office upon a government shutdown. The fact that this right here, that should only be the thing that needs to be said here. That's probably the only thing that needs to be said here. But this is the craziest thing. Our Constitution never even fathomed that a shutdown would occur. Why? Because a shutdown didn't occur for most of 2 centuries of our nation's history. From 1776 to 1979, we never had a shutdown. And then all of a sudden, Republicans made Jimmy Carter a lame duck president, and then, and only then, did we have our first government shutdown. Thanks to fucking Reagan. And every administration since has had a shutdown occur during their watch. And now we are literally playing chicken with the whole government shutdown thing, lasting days and weeks, or in this case, almost months. Each and every occurrence of a government shutdown, going all the way back to Carter to the present, should have immediately resulted in every single member of Congress being expelled. Because you have one job, and that is to keep the country running, to represent the American people. Shutting down the government, shutting down the flow of resources to these social programs ain't that. So, at a bare fucking minimum, all members of Congress, regardless of chamber, shall be immediately removed from office upon a government shutdown. I feel like that is just the basic minimum. Right, if I left my job for 50 days, I would be fired. You'd be fired after 3 days, let's be honest. So why does Congress get any special treatment? Now, well, Sam, if we did that and there was a government shutdown, what about the good Congress people and senators that are going to be banned from ever holding office again? So be it. If I am in Congress and I am unable to prevent fellow members of Congress from shutting down the government, sucks to suck for me, but I will have been culpable in this problem because I wasn't able to whip the vote to get them to not play these stupid games, right? And again, there isn't any consequences for these actions. There is no accountability for shutting down the government. Threatening 41 million people's livelihood? No consequences. No back pay for air traffic controllers and so on and so forth, federal employees? No consequences. Trying to fire federal employees during a shutdown? No consequences. There is no consequences to shutting down the government. If you implemented consequences, I highly doubt you would have a government shutdown situation to begin with. And if there was that much of a bottleneck between factions of Congress, that even with that threat, then everybody deserves to get fucked anyway. Because that should never happen. There should never be such a bottleneck in government that two conflicting or contrasting parties cannot come to a mutual agreement for the greater good. That's just not That's not how that works. That is political terrorism. We will shut down the government and hold everyone hostage unless you comply. No, motherfucker, you can all go to prison. And I say that in the very next line. All members of Congress, regardless of chamber, shall be charged with failure to uphold the Constitution, their oaths, and be charged with sabotage, sedition, and crimes against the state. Again, even if I was a member of Congress, I would deserve that punishment because I was unable to prevent my senior representatives from shooting themselves in the foot repeatedly. Again, if we cannot come to terms and we cannot work together, then we clearly do not need to be in those positions. That's just the reality. So, this page I wrote specifically because of the shutdown, and I want there to be extreme consequences to discourage any individual and any party or group or faction from ever trying to hold our government hostage against the American people. Because that, if we don't start holding these pieces of garbage accountable, this is going to become the new norm. And we cannot have that.
You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible.
The House will hold its first round of votes Wednesday afternoon, but the deal leaving many Democrats.
Oh, so despite the sense of urgency, the vote's still going to be literally tomorrow, Wednesday. Outstanding.
Outraged because it does nothing to address the expiring Obamacare subsidies that the party spent weeks holding out on as a precondition for reopening the government.
We're not going to support partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people.
Apparently you are, because again, that bill passed. And that just goes to show how useless Democrats are. They held out for 35 days plus on this government shutdown, demanding that the Republicans give an inch about health care. And then at the 11th hour, they're like, you know what? That's fine. As long as you pinky swear that we'll get to vote on it, we'll open the government again. Like, what kind of cowards are in office right now representing the opposition? This is why I stressy. This is why I'm never going to be a skinny man.
Said the deal reached in the Senate comes with a promise from Republicans to hold a future vote on health care. Even Republicans acknowledging that's not going anywhere.
It seems like the health care bill that Democrats will be putting on the floor has a very low chance of getting any Republican support.
Yeah, I would say it won't get any.
So we asked Democratic senators why they decided to reopen the government without their key demand.
People are aware now that this is an issue and they know who's fighting for them. But it's time to end the suffering that people are feeling because of this government shutdown.
So, Democrats, in their infinite wisdom, are saying we want a vote. Republicans are saying we'll give you a vote, but we're still not going to vote for it. And the justification for voting for it anyway is people are now aware about how the government impacts them and that who is fighting for them. Let me rephrase. Who is fighting for us if you literally capitulate? How is that fighting for the American people if you give in and then the promise that is made is immediately being thrown in your face? Oh yeah, we'll hold a vote on your health care bill, but we're not going to support it. This, if you're going to fight the government shutdown, and this is in spite of the policy that I just wrote, if you're going to fight about it, at the very least, get a win. You don't even have a win other than patting yourself on the back. Don't pull a muscle.
The impacts of the shutdown rippling across the country, from delayed food assistance to missed paychecks, and massive travel delays due to a shortage of air traffic controllers and TSA agents. The president calling for air traffic controllers who have been working without pay to be penalized if they haven't shown up for work. The president writing on social media that those who called out should leave their jobs with no payment or severance of any kind, while those who didn't take time off should get a bonus of $10,000.
We should not have had people leaving their jobs. And what
that is A, illegal, not paying people the back pay for the shutdown because they would have been paid regardless. Secondly, you have the powers and the authorities with the emergency funds to keep paying key personnel, and you're choosing not to. And then threatening the people who quit and resigned so that they could find other work to sustain their fucking families is, again, monstrous. And he's going out of his way to spread this vile belief in these ideals. If we shut down the government and we don't pay you, you should just shut up and take it. And the fact that isn't immediately tanking his support amongst even his most ardent followers is nothing short of cult-like mentality. We cannot sustain our country under this administration.
Basically did it. So President Trump did sign a bill into law back in 2019 that guarantees back pay for all federal workers. The president also says that he will abide by this deal reached in the Senate, which does include a provision that requires him to rehire the federal workers he fired during the shutdown. And of course, Americans out there are all asking the same question. When exactly is this government shutdown going to end? Well, again, the House expected to take up this measure tomorrow. Then it heads to the president's desk for his signature. But the impacts of this shutdown could last another week, especially for travel, Robin.
No, the impacts of this shutdown can last years. Years. Literally years. Because again, these air traffic controllers are probably not going to take the risk of going back to the FAA. These TSA agents are probably not going to take the risk of going back to the federal government. And the people who have struggled to get their food stamps or their housing, and they are probably going to suffer major medical, if not financial, issues for months and years to come. This has dramatic consequences. God knows how many people died because of the lack of food, water, or heat during this time of year. We might never know because, God forbid, one of these news networks actually does their fucking job. Secondly, Trump already... again, calling Trump a hypocrite is like calling water wet. Trump himself signed a law back in 2019 stating that all federal employees will get back pay no matter what, and yet here he is banging on his chest saying they're not going to get paid at all. It's like, are you literally trying to undermine your own policies and your own successes? Or do you even remember doing that? And the answer is probably no. So let me finish this real quick. And I guess we will... there's still a little bit to cover on the shutdown, actually.
Tonight, the breakthrough. After nearly 6 weeks, the federal government shutdown looks set to end.
We have support from enough,
sparking a deep divide among Democrats.
There is no great secret, Ryan, that there is a debate now about the future of the Democratic Party.
For weeks, Senate Republicans have not had enough Democratic votes to end the shutdown. But overnight, 5 new Senate Democrats joined 3 others, voting to no longer block the reopening of the government in exchange for a concession that Senate Republicans had been offering for weeks to hold a vote on extending Obamacare subsidies. Now, many progressive Democrats are accusing their Democratic colleagues of caving by not getting Republicans to agree to more.
How disappointed are you in your Democratic colleagues that are voting yes for this bill?
Look, I think it was a terrible, terrible vote. At a time when we have a broken healthcare system, this is going to make our healthcare system even worse.
Well, it was the only deal on the table.
New Hampshire Democrat.
Say what you will about Bernie Sanders, but he is right about that. We already heard this lady say, well, it's the best that we can do, and now people know who we're fighting for. I am going to be running for Congress in Ohio in an extremely gerrymandered Republican district, okay? That's why I'm running as a Republican. And I am honestly a little afraid to talk to my future constituents about the reality because I do not know how much of the Kool-Aid they have drank, to be honest. And it's not that I think Republican-leaning voters are dumb or ineffectual or don't know anything or don't know any better. I think people who tend to vote Republican don't trust Democrats because the information that they receive tells them to not trust Democrats. And then even when there is information that is pro-Democrat, you see stuff like this where Democrats just posture for whatever reason and then don't actually accomplish anything. So I understand why Republicans or people who vote Republican would. Because it seems on paper that Republicans at least are getting something done. Whether or not it's good, it is something. So what we have to do, the mission, what I'm worried about is being able to convince these Republican-leaning voters that the something that must be done is to go against the status quo of our current administration. That's my concern. I'm going to still be me. I'm still going to say what needs to be said. But it's a question of, do enough people now see Trump for what he is and the Democrats for what they are and recognize that this two-party system is broken. It is the unification of corruption. And that, yes, okay, fine, we have to run in one party or the other for now, because, by the way, in order to run as an independent in Ohio, you would need 2,500 signatures, but neither here nor there. It's just, we are so ingrained to vote red or blue that coming in with I is just too much of the left field for most people, plus 2,500 signatures. That's that is a tall order for even campaigns with a lot of volunteers and money, right? All I'm saying is, we are dealing with a constitutional crisis. To be fair, we are no longer a constitutional democracy because of this administration's behavior. We are at best, a failed democracy hanging on to the dregs of at least the bureaucracy of it, right? It's convincing our fellow Americans that if we want a democracy, representative or otherwise, we are going to have to do something different, and we're going to have to put ourselves out there to trust somebody willing to do things differently and hope that they have the chance and the opportunity to go through with it. That's what we need. And I know there's a lot of hope and but and if in that statement. Yet, that is exactly what our country was founded on. That is literally what our country was built upon. And it is time to bring that ideal, that ideology, those core beliefs and values back to the forefront. So, let's see. Let's talk about the flights again, or some more. I say again, it seems a lot of the news this week is similar to the news from last week.
A41 of the shutdown, with air traffic controllers today missing their second full paycheck.
Enough is enough.
Union President Nick Daniels demanding that controllers get paid now. 3,000 flights canceled on Sunday, already more than 2,000 cut today.
Flight from here back home is only an hour, so now I have to drive about 5, and who knows with traffic right now.
The Miller family stuck at LAX after their morning flight was canceled, rescheduled for this evening.
Travel is stressful, and so to be delayed, canceled, all of that just adds to your frustration, which doesn't help.
While controllers have been working with...
And mind you, most of these people are stuck staying at the physical airport. Not going to a hotel, not getting vouchers, not getting refunds, not getting any sort of accommodation whatsoever. Just the cold, hard airport floor and those extremely uncomfortable lobby seats at the gates. Like, this is, again, pure chaos and economic terrorism. That's all this is. It's chaos and economic terrorism. Again, 5% of the GDP comes from aviation, comes from air travel, whether that's cargo or passenger travel. 5% of our nation's GDP, $1.4 trillion, is right here. And this administration is threatening air traffic controllers and is tanking that portion of our economy for a pissing contest. And a pissing contest, mind you, where if they win, which it seems like they will, we are going to lose healthcare. We are going to lose social services and programs. We are going to lose the most of the social victories that we have fought and bled for almost 80 years. We are going to lose a majority of them with this Republican bill. So not only did we face the government shutdown, which is devastating our economy and our livelihoods, once this bill passes, it's going to solidify many of those cuts and those harmful things that have already started impacting us. We literally cannot allow this behavior to go unaccounted for.
Without pay, President Trump on Truth Social threatened those who've not shown up. All air traffic controllers must get back to work now. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially docked. For controllers who are working, I will be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person.
The added stress leads to fatigue. The fatigue has led to the erosion of safety and the increased risk every day that this shutdown drags on.
Amy Lark and her husband, both controllers, now cutting back after 4 missed paychecks.
What does Christmas look like? What does New Year's look like? How long can we last? What are we going to do when we do run out?
Long lines on runways and inside airport terminals, as TSA officers have also gone a full month without a paycheck.
Let's just keep it real. How many people can afford to go a full month without a paycheck? I mean, honestly, that is the question. Can you afford to go a whole month without a paycheck? And if the answer is no, why would you expect federal employees who make as much or less than you, how could you expect them to do what you are clearly unable to do as well? Now, air traffic controllers, they make $250,000 a piece, and that family had 2 of them. They should be financially well, but here's the difference. Here's the problem. You make $500,000 a year of combined income. You're going to live a lifestyle that accommodates that $500,000 annual income. Just like if you make $80,000 combined, you're going to live that lifestyle. And God forbid you make $40,000 combined, you're going to live that lifestyle. And that lifestyle in America is typically paycheck to paycheck. At most, you're going to have 6 months of savings. That is the most that the average American typically has. And only retirees have more than that because, well, they have 401ks and pensions and such, right? Most people do not have a year of savings or 2 or 3 or 4 years of savings because we just don't live that way in our society. So you might just play the world's smallest violin for the poor air traffic controllers making $250,000 a pop. They can't go a whole month without pay. Oh no, what are they going to do without their $24,000? The same thing that you wouldn't do with your month of pay. And that's the point. All labor is on equal footing. Yeah, fine, some people make more money than other people, but we are all in this thing together. And if one worker is being forced to do without, then that is the equivalent of every worker being forced. The potential for every worker being forced to do without. Imagine if this administration forces you to go to work for 30 days straight while the bill collectors still demand their bills to be paid. There is no provision that if you're a federal employee, military, aviation, TSA, what have you, and there's a government shutdown that, you have a payment holiday until the government comes back online. That's not how that works. 1, there aren't any provisions to cover that. And 2, even if there were, they would have to be honored and enforced, which we are already seeing isn't the case. So, 30 days without a paycheck. That is what the aviation industry is facing. I can't survive 30 days without a paycheck, and I am making fairly good money, if I may say so, and I cannot afford to go a month without pay. How do you expect everybody impacted by this government shutdown to do the same?
And Tom joins us now live from Reagan National Airport. But Tom, we're also following some late-breaking news at another Washington airport.
Yeah, that's right. At Dulles Airport, rather, this evening, we are watching fire rescue equipment on the scene after one of those people movers, they call them a mobile lounge, crashed into a dock right there. We're told 8 people have been
transferred. And now we're having
local
safety incidents on airports as well. Outstanding. Most Americans don't have enough money for a $500 emergency, let alone go without pay for a whole month. Right. We definitely have covered that before, but that is an extremely valid point. If people can't afford to go a month without pay, let alone afford a $500 emergency, like, we're cooked, right? We already can't afford $500, and you're going to force people to go a whole month without pay? Again, it's absolutely egregious. The complete what is the word that describes that? The disillusionment, the disassociation with reality? Like, so many words to describe how far removed the complete disregard. That's good too. The complete disregard this administration has for the reality of the working class, for just the regular citizen, is breathtaking. So, speaking of the flight
Speaker
cuts,
Mike Johnson gets his way.
This video will cover, or should cover, a little bit further discourse on how these cuts are going to continue on as they have been, and the impact that that's going to have.
By this time tomorrow, the House could be gathering for a vote to reopen the federal government. Though, when the shutdown ends, some of the damage will linger. Staffing issues could disrupt air travel for weeks or longer. And just one day after President Trump threatened to dock the pay of air traffic controllers who call out, the FAA is warning that more flight cuts could keep happening. Over 1,200 flights have been canceled today. Now more than 2,300 are delayed. CNN's Pete Montine is live at Reagan National Airport, one of the 40 airports that are feeling this. Pete, what more are you learning?
Well, the good news is that the number of FAA air traffic control facilities with understaffing enough to be an issue, that number is actually pretty small today. Only about 2 or 3 facilities causing problems today. Compare that to about 40 yesterday, which is...
So, only a few facilities causing problems for delays. The fucking news can't stop spouting the propaganda. The understaffing is not the problem. It's the government shutdown and this government's unwillingness to honor its fucking promises to its employees, i.e. payment and job security. Oh my God, this is so frustrating. It is so hard to stream politics. Honestly, there are so many, there are days where I just wish I did not give a damn about politics. I really do. There are days where I just wish I could be with my goofy little headset and the cat ears and some, like, gamer shirt and some techno futuristic sci-fi background instead. And in fact, I have one. Let's see. Would this show up right away? So, like, some nifty techno futuristic looking deal, right? Of course, now it's not responding, so I hope I don't accidentally stop streaming. I guess what I'm trying to say, though, is, like, there are any number of things I'm certain any of us would rather be doing right now than dealing with the absolute insanity, the absolute batshittery that is this administration and the politics of today. Like, this is not what any of us were anticipating when we were growing up. Like, this was unheard of in the 90s. You would, when we were kids, we were promised damn near Star Trek future in for society. That we would be having, coffee on friggin' the moon and Mars. And instead, we have housing crises. People are living paycheck to paycheck. People can't afford emergencies. 60% of the working class are the working poor. And 69% of Americans feel like they cannot keep up with their expenses, which means that 60% has now become 69%. There are so many days where I wish I just did not care or it did not bother me. So I could just focus on silly little things. But unfortunately, I do care. Unfortunately, it's difficult to not focus on this because it is impactful. It is harming every single one of us. And there's nothing to do about it. It's just dealing with the suck, right? So I found my backgrounds page, but I kind of, this would be the funnier thing. Oh, it's going to change the size of it too. Son of a bitch. But this, just doing video games with the space in the background or whatever. That's what we should all be doing. We should be enjoying our hobbies, learning how to program, art, crafts. But instead, it's like, nope, we got to talk about dystopian nightmares. Sorry, we got to talk about the future of whether or not we might even have one. Nope, sorry. We just have to keep talking about the hypocrisy of this administration, the corruption of this administration, because it is starting to impact us whether we like it or not. So, folks, I empathize with the difficulty of watching politics, streamers or otherwise, because as a content creator, as a streamer, as a politician who is actively running for Congress, I can tell you that I am also distraught about the day in and day out of our political reality. So, anyway, I'll probably cut this when I post it. Going on a little sad soapbox there, I guess. I get anxiety if I don't pay attention because I keep thinking about what could be happening. Hat's going to destroy our lives, and I don't know about it. No, and that's right there with you. Like, I can't not know because the not knowing is what brought me to the wanting to know and wanting to do something about it. I can't live my life in ignorance again. Once that shoe is dropped, as they say, there's no going back, right? You can't put the genie back in the bottle. But I'm done with this video because this piece of garbage can't stop reporting in like the most disingenuous way.
President Trump doubling down on the economy, now claiming that there's virtually no inflation, and most recently also saying quotes like this: "I don't want to hear about the affordability," claiming that Democrats are making up numbers. But the big question is, no matter what they're saying, how do Americans feel about the economy right now and the impact of rising prices, where inflation is, paying their bills, being able to buy food at the grocery store? Harry Enton is taking a look and running the numbers on all of this.
Well, let's see if that
Politicians can say
69% is still
politician
there.
Things,
yes.
But where are things with the economy right now and how people are feeling about it?
Yeah, what President Trump is trying to sell, the American folks aren't buying, and we can see it pretty simply here. Take a look here. This is consumer sentiment, the current conditions. Consumer sentiment can be the current conditions or it can be future expectations. We're looking at current conditions. And get this, according to the University of Michigan, we are dealing with the worst ever view of current conditions dating all the way back since 1951. This is record.
Oh, this is the 1900s guy. Oh, 1993. Fuck you. But also, this is the worst ever economy to date, and that includes COVID. That includes the housing bubble in 2008, the second economic crash of 2012, and the third economic crash of 2013. We had 7 years of slight breathing room, and then COVID devastated everything. And people are now saying that this economy is worse than all of those.
in the way you don't want to be breaking records. And get this, Kate, it is down 30%. Consumer sentiment of current conditions down 30% from January when Donald Trump took office. No bueno.
That is significant and something you can't ignore. You shouldn't ignore.
No, you should not.
Ignore to your peril. But they do not feel good about the economy. How much are they blaming this on President Trump?
Yeah, it would be one thing that President Trump could ignore it if folks weren't blaming him for it. But take a look here. Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions in America. Look at this. We're dealing with.
So here's the thing. If you have a number that's 50% or more, that means that includes at least some of your base. So there are Republicans, no matter what, blaming Trump right now for the worsened economic situation. Not that that really matters, per se, because if they're not going to deviate from him as much as they're going to blame him, then it's like the Democrats holding out for concessions from the Republicans to open up the government and then opening up the government anyway, right? So what needs to happen, and going back to, my concerns about running for office in this district, we need to focus on our messaging in the areas that matter to the people and discuss those issues. 5 years ago, I might have still needed to talk about cops, immigration, abortion, and queer rights, right? Those might have still been things I had to talk about because those were the things that were the low-hanging fruit policy positions of voters in my district. But now it's the economy, because the economy is what is affecting everybody, regardless of political beliefs, regardless of religious background, regardless of any other demographic. We are all struggling under this economy. So we need to reach people at those levels. And if you are running for office in a blue or red district or whatever district, you need to start focusing and working on your messaging to address the economy. Hey, I'm running against the incumbent who facilitated the votes that brought us this economy. I want to make sure this economy never, ever happens again, because I, like you, am a worker, and I can't afford to live in this economy for much longer myself, let alone for an extended period of time. We cannot have 4 years of this economy, which is why I, Samuel Ronan, am running for Congress to represent you. And you leave it at that. Just leave it at that. If they ask you about abortion, be like, well, I think it's more economic to get an abortion now than not. Who's going to raise a kid in this economy, right? And hope that doesn't get you, like, immediately threatened, right? So, All right, so we made it an hour already. Throat's a little bit dry. Okay. Let's move on a little bit to a different part of this administration's corruption and political failures.
Welcome back. The White House has announced that President Trump is pardoning a long list of political allies who were part.
See the Trump pardons allies who sought to overturn the 2020 election? No, remember, and I know today's Taco Tuesday, not Worldwide Wednesdays, but remember when Bolsonaro, the Brazilian president who tried to overthrow the Brazilian election, got sentenced and charged for coup d'etat and crimes against democracy? These were some of the things that Bolsonaro was doing, making it so that the people in Congress that supported his coup couldn't be charged or threatened or something, right? Trump is doing the same thing, despite claiming that he had nothing to do with the insurrection, despite claiming that it wasn't a coup, that it was just protesters very energetic for Trump. If that were the case, why issue pardons to everybody and make it that much harder to get justice for the coup that occurred.
Part of his effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Rudy Giuliani, who was Trump's lawyer during the 2020 election fight, is among the 77 people who are receiving full, complete, and unconditional pardons. The list also includes former Trump attorneys Sidney Powell, John Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, and Jenna Ellis, as well as former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark. The move is largely symbolic. None of the pardoned people have been convicted of any federal crimes. NBC News senior justice reporter Ryan.
If they haven't been convicted of any crimes, then why are they getting full and unconditional pardons? The act of pardoning means that there was a crime committed at the federal level, correct? I mean, am I wrong? Can you be pardoned if you haven't committed a crime? The Supreme Court said in Ex parte Garland, once the act has been committed, it can be pardoned. But you can't pardon future acts. But once it's been committed, you can pardon someone even if they haven't been charged yet, even if they haven't been convicted yet. So, by pardoning... by the simple fact of pardoning somebody, whether they've been charged or convicted, you are admitting that they did something that could have been charged or convicted. So the actual act of pardoning them implies their guilt. Right? He could have just done nothing and nobody would have scrutinized it at all. But by pardoning them, it implies that they are guilty of something. Trump pardoned those folks to help him steal the election. No, okay, the 2026 election, yeah. No, and yeah, I agree. The 2026 midterms are still up for grabs, 100%. That is absolutely right, Anna. Trump is admitting that these people committed crimes and is giving them full unconditional. And again, you can't pardon somebody unless they actually did something to be pardoned with. Like, that's wild.
Riley joins me now to talk more about this. So, Ryan, if none of these people have been pardoned, have been convicted of a federal crime, what's the purpose of these pardons?
I mean, I think you nailed it up top. It's symbolic because there was zero chance that any of these people were going to be charged with federal crimes in the first place, given the fact that the statute of limitations expires very shortly. 5-year anniversary of January 6th is coming.
So wait a minute. You can be a part of an insurrection or a coup d'etat, and then if nothing happens after 5 years, it's just swept under the rug? Oh my God. Like, honestly, if you're not laughing at the sheer corruption of our government, of our laws, of the people committing crimes, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is genuine. Like, it is horrifying. It is absolutely, but it's like a horror comedy, right? Like, that is still funny. It is funny how comically evil and corrupt this country is and how our laws were written to allow the worst of the worst criminals, people who are actively attempting to overthrow our government and undermine our Constitution, have a 5-year statute of limitations for treason. That's wild.
Coming up, the election took place 5 years ago, so the statute is running out very quickly, and so this really is largely a symbolic factor. But overall, the way that Trump and his allies have completely changed the narrative on January 6th over the past 5 years is kind of remarkable, and I think that fits into this effort. Remember, 5 years ago, you had all of these corporations lining up saying that we're not going to donate money to anyone who voted to overturn the free results of the 2020 election and voted to install Donald Trump as president over the will of the American people. And now we're in a much, much different place where you have a number of corporations who are...
And this guy, for all of the word salad that he is spewing, didn't mention the most simple aspect of what a pardon is. you can't pardon future acts, but once committed, you can pardon someone even if they haven't been charged yet or convicted. So this guy is going off on the propaganda train some more, as per usual, about how there's this narrative shift and it's crazy how society has changed and da-da-da-da-da, and it's largely symbolic. No, it is an admission of guilt and a prevention of accountability. That is what is happening. The beauty is that a president, the next president, can revoke those pardons, right? Well, I might be wrong on that, actually. Oh, can the president pardon himself? That's Jesus Christ. Can a president revoke the pardons of a previous president? So, I guess that has to do with constitutional authority. There it is. Point. Okay, so I guess I couldn't do that. Which is crazy then, because a corrupt president is pardoning corrupt officials who tried to install this corrupt president into power in the first place. Got pardoned and is now untouchable? Well, I wonder, you know what? No, I gotta lay off the spicy rhetoric. I gotta stay off the spicy rhetoric. I'm pretty sure there are ways that the language of the pardon itself has to specify what's being pardoned, right? I'm getting kind of to the point where it just really feels like yeah, sorry. I guess that is too much for I'd actually have to do some research on that. That is beyond the scope of this stream. That's wild. What's even more wild is the fact that Ghislaine Gazelle, whatever the fuck her name is trying to get clemency for her role in child sex trafficking. That's ridiculous.
7:33 now. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's convicted sex trafficking accomplice, is reportedly seeking a commutation of her 20 years federal prison sentence set to run through 2037, according to a letter obtained by CBS News. House Judiciary Democrats told President Trump that Maxwell is preparing a clemency request with help from prison officials. Now, that letter also accuses the Trump administration of giving Maxwell special treatment at Texas prison, where she is serving her time right now.
Live to Capitol Hill here tonight, where
all right, let's try this again.
Democrats have just revealed that Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell here, will and does plan to ask President Trump to commute her 20-year prison sentence. Trump previously said he'd, quote, have to take a look at any application submitted. An attorney representing some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims calling that possibility, quote, disgraceful.
The grounds for commutation are typically things like wrongful conviction. Well, that's not going to apply here. A jury of her peers held she was a sex trafficker.
Earlier this year, Maxwell in a deposition said Trump...
I mean... Enough said, right? Like, she's asking Trump to commute her sentence when she is very clearly guilty and was found guilty in a court of law. Now, the jury of peers thing, I mean, okay, but notwithstanding, she was found guilty, and she is guilty. There's no question that she's guilty, and she wants her sentence commuted. My question is, the fact that Trump said he would take a look at it should literally concern everyone on planet Earth. Because if he's even considering commuting one of the most heinous criminals in modern times, then what dirt does she have on him that she could even have the audacity to ask for a commutation of her sentence in the first place? Secondly, if she gets free, then what? Is she going to be monitored? Is she going to have to go into the witness protection? Is she going to go on to the Trump administration staff? Like, what's the end game here? Again, she shouldn't be commuted in the first place, but this administration might do that. So what's the end game? And then if she ends up on his administration, how does that not immediately lead to the massive civil uprising demanding his resignation and Congress finally being able to impeach this stubborn bastard? Because you don't free the devil from hell and then let them run free, and knowing this administration, he's gonna put them on the team. So like, I don't understand how even politically you can even attempt to humor this. But that's how corrupt we've gotten in this country, that convicted sex traffickers, child sex traffickers, can potentially petition the President of the United States to have their sentence commuted and be taken seriously.
Trump wasn't involved in any of Epstein's crimes immediately after she received a questionable prison transfer. And a whistleblower now alleging she's receiving some special treatment while behind bars, including customized meals, hand-delivered to her cell, private meetings with visitors who can bring in a laptop computer, and that she's been allowed to play with service animals.
Okay. So, Ghislaine is about to become a member of the Trump administration. I don't... Give me a second here, because this is... I don't know how to take... So, the mainstream media will just report on Trump without any scrutiny. And then the rest of us are powerless to do anything. So the only thing we can do is react, speak, condemn, right? How many different ways can it be said that the underlying problems with this administration is their lack of accountability? And it's not just Trump, it's everybody in the administration. How many more crimes have to be committed? How much lower do they have to reach before it's enough? Like, what is the boiling point for the American people? Freeing Ghislaine Maxwell? Because the Epstein files went viral, went actually crazy hard for about 2 months, and now that's not even in the news anymore. That was the closest we have come as a country to uniting against this administration, and they managed to weather it because the news focused on parroting his talk and his policies and rhetoric on it, rather than scrutinizing it and holding him accountable. If our media and society allows her to go free after all of that, knowing that she is meeting with people who are bringing laptops, meaning she is working. She is working. Do you not Ghislaine is conducting business out of a Texas prison and asking the President of the United States of America to commute her sentence of child sex trafficking. She still has contacts. She still has influence. People are still coming to work with her, for her. She is still a powerful and influential entity, despite everything. Despite the severity of her crimes, she has not fallen from her perch. So much so, in fact, that she can get the ear of the President of the United States of... I don't know what role she's about to play in our nation's history. Because apparently convicted felon isn't the role for her. But the fact that it doesn't end with convicted felon is deeply, deeply disturbing and concerning. So, let's see what this video is about.
Does the Trump administration have a credibility problem in the court of law? Well, this morning, several cases around the country are pointing exactly to that. A federal judge in Chicago says a top Border Patrol agent was lying Thursday when he said he was hit in the head with a rock before deploying tear gas on protesters. Judge Sarah Ellis called the government's portrayal of Chicago untrue, finding the evidence presented by that agent simply not credible. In another embarrassment for Trump's DOJ this week, a man who threw a Subway sandwich at an officer in Washington has been found not guilty of the only misdemeanor assault charge that he was charged with. And prosecutors were initially seeking a felony charge for that man, and they failed to secure an indictment. Lastly, a magistrate judge is slamming prosecutors in James Comey's trial for their handling of evidence, accusing Trump's handpicked attorney and prosecutor of taking an indict first and investigate second approach. There's a lot in the courts happening, and I will say Trump is winning in some cases, but on the question of can the government's word be trusted, that's being called into question many times. And I'm actually flabbergasted by this because let me play for you what...
All right, so this is going to be a boring video. It's putting me to sleep already. And it's more... The problem with these panel talks, these table for five, is we have been talking about the corruption and the hypocrisy and so on and so on. We are obviously talking about that, but we're talking about it directly and challenging it directly without it being a gotcha, without trying to be holier than thou. This stream, y'all with me in chat and everywhere else, we are trying to convey why it's corrupt, why it's bad, why this should be a concern. This portrayal is immediately... We're better, we're smarter, we're here, get used to it. And that is not the approach to win the hearts and minds of the American people. So the fact that the federal government is lying, is manufacturing and fabricating evidence, indicting first, investigate second, so on and so forth, these are not in question. And the fact that magistrates are condemning and shooting it down with fire and brimstone should trigger consequences. Those agents should be charged with falsifying information, fabricating evidence, lying under oath, mishandling of their power and their abilities or their official positions. Like, there is no accountability. There is no repercussion for the lying. Right? So what are we to do if A, the government can't be trusted, will lie, will cheat, and will go out of its way to hurt you, and even when found out, won't be held accountable? Where in all of these things is that a functioning democracy? And if these 5 things don't terrify you, I don't know how else to reach you. We already don't have due process. We're already in the Zeig mir deine Papieren stage, right? We are literally at the stage where masked Gestapo can pull you out of your car with your infant in the back seat, have the Gestapo drive your vehicle with your infant in the back seat, and disappear you, right? I cannot emphasize enough that if this administration continues to act with impunity and not be held accountable, we're cooked. Doesn't matter how many people run for office. Doesn't matter how many people protest. If they're not going to be held accountable and we're not going to do anything about it, right? We're cooked. So let me rephrase. It does matter how many people protest. It needs to go up from 7 million to 270 million, right? 270 million 18-year-olds or older. Well, I guess actually there's 330 million Americans. Let's just minus the 1% would be 327 million. If we could get 327 million people to stand up and against this administration, we could get things done, right? But what we really truly need is this administration to be held accountable, and failing that, we need to do something. General strike or mass civil protest. If we don't do that, if we literally do not do that, we're cooked. We are literally going to be worse off than the good Germans. In fact, the only realistic outcome of all of this is what's happening in Sudan, the West Bank, and Gaza. If you want to know the future of America, you look at any of those 3 places. Gaza, the West Bank, or Sudan. Because an authoritarian regime, Tanzania would be another one. Where was it? It was, dang it. It wasn't the Philippines. It was the other countries that have been fallen lately. Bangladesh, I think, was one of them, right? So all of these countries that have authoritarian regimes that are literally sending the military and police against the citizens that are dissenting and or killing them is the future of America. It has already been said out loud that is using the military, is using federal agents to quell dissent, and is actively stating that citizens in certain cities that are known to dissent against him are enemies of the state. So I don't know what Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine, Stormtrooper nonsense you haven't seen yet that'll make it finally click. But by the time we do have people marching in our streets. We watched that video of ICE marching 10 deep in the streets of Chicago. I don't know what to tell you. The time to act was about 4 or 5 months ago. Arguably 10 months ago. But it is absolutely time today as well. So, hello, Third Way. Welcome to the stream. I'm trying to do these streams in a way that they're going to be easier to cut for stream clips, but it's just like we get these videos and all I can do is go off the rails. So I got to work on my craft apparently.
Welcome back, everyone.
Remember the South Korean plant workers? They're finally going to get theirs.
And more
Let's
than
go.
300 South Korean workers at a battery plant owned jointly by Hyundai and LG Energy Solution were detained by ICE and deported in September amid President Trump's immigration crackdown. 2 months later, and the incident continues to strain relations between South Korea and the United States.
Again, his racist immigration policies is straining diplomatic relations with a whole country and ally. An ally that we have military bases with. Multiple military bases with. We have a diplomatic, economic, and military alliance with South Korea. And one racist incident is threatening all of it. I mean, granted, as a racist incident should, but it's the fact that it even happened, and the when it happened, and the how it happened. This administration allowed an absolute maniacal amount of ICE agents to round up lawful workers in this country and treated them like prisoners of war. Except worse. And then all of the constant backlash from South Korea against America, despite the fact that South Korean leaders are still blowing sunshine up his ass anyway, with the crown and the whatever else. There are zero wins from this administration. There are zero.
Now, many of those workers are preparing to sue ICE, and our Selena Wang recently traveled to Asia and spoke to one of them.
These South Korean workers came to help build America's factories. Instead, they were shackled and arrested. Mr. Kim, who asked that we not use his full name or show his face, is one of hundreds of skilled engineers brought to this nearly 3,000-acre Hyundai LG Energy.
And remember that South Korea was investing billions of dollars in this and other plants in the United States and is scrapping them all because of this incident.
Solution battery plant in southeastern Georgia.
Walk me through what happened on September 4th.
오전 8시경에 이제 저희는 현장에서 출근을 했고 이제 중간에 이제 조금 수근거리는 소리가 들려서 이제 그걸 알아봤더니 무장한 경찰이 공장 내로 진입을 하고 있다.
For Homeland Security, we have a search warrant for the whole site.
Scores of federal agents swarmed the site, detaining more than 500 workers, including more than 300 from South Korea, contractors for Hyundai and LG.
This, in fact, was the largest single-site enforcement operation in the history of Homeland Security investigations.
And America was fucking bragging about it. The fact that America hasn't turned into an international pariah and that countries just straight up haven't written us off is remarkable. It is remarkable that we even have diplomatic relations with any country, to include Europe. I am shocked every single day that goes by that America doesn't end up completely isolated from the rest of the world because of this clown. And the fact that the atrocities that we have been committing in the past 10 months are being upheld and bragged about by the leadership in charge of committing the atrocities. Once the Nuremberg-style trials happen, it's going to be a global holiday. Sure. But, like, how much horror do we have to live through first before that happens? And I honestly shudder to think about the answer to that question.
그냥 영화에서 보던 완전 무장한 상태였고 드론이나 헬기가 떠다니고 있었고 뭐 당연히 소총류는 당연히 소지를 하고 있었고.
Did they tell you why you were being arrested?
뭐 체포 전이나 구금 전이나 후나 그런 사실은 아예.
Sorry. Neither before nor after the arrest, or even now, have we ever been told any reason for our detention. Zero due process. If one person in this country doesn't have due process, nobody in this country has due process. And especially the fact that to this day, there has been no explanation, apology, or anything for it. Just the largest operation in our nation's history. It's right. It is kidnapping and trafficking. It was attempted trafficking for sure. Because if the government of South Korea hadn't intervened as quickly as they did, these folks might have been well on their way to El Salvador for all we know.
공지를 해주지 않았고 그 사유에 대해서는 현재까지도 따로 공지받은 바가 없습니다.
Kim says their phones were confiscated. They were loaded onto buses.
Yeah, but here's the thing too.
Loaded.
These people are being chained in gang chains, i.e., the same way you would. And he's got the chain on his. He's got the chain on his waist too. You only detain people like this that are violent, dangerous, convicted felons, not regular people from a facility. Well, granted, I guess you wouldn't detain hundreds of people from a facility in the first place, but this is already inhumane. You are literally chaining them up like they are the worst of the worst criminals or slaves. Because guess what? That's how slaves were chained as well. And it's crazy. It is absolutely breathtakingly insane that this is now normalized in America. Seeing this image from ICE and people are like, yeah, no, I guess that's just the way it is now. No fucking way.
Onto buses and driven hours away to an ICE detention center. He said groups of 60 to 80 people were held in pods. He described the facility as cold and unsanitary, with moldy mattresses, water that smelled so bad he drank as little as possible, and toilets with no privacy.
Did you at any point feel that you were being
concentration camp? We have concentration camps in America, and we are actively sending people to them with no oversight. And the Congress people who tried to oversee these concentration camps were threatened by the very agencies they were there to oversee. Why not just directly imitate the immigration policies of the Soviet Union to begin with? Entering the country should require permission from the KGB. I mean, that is kind of how it is. The immigration here is awful. And also, the KGB is the secret police, so no. We definitely don't want to have a secret police force in charge of anything or existing. That's the opposite of the direction we want to go. The authorities are detaining people coming into the country and scrolling through their social media, and if they don't like what they post, they get sent back. Right. No, and you're right. That is exactly what is happening today.
discriminated against?
저희가 그 팟에 수용이 돼 있을 때 그 교도관들의 태도가 굉장히 부정적이었는데 그걸 넘어서 이제 김정은 얘기를 한다던가 눈을 양쪽으로 찢
They were making racist. Oh my God. The Nuremberg style trials, man. They cannot come soon enough. They just really can't.
찢어서 아시안을 비하한다는 제스처를 취한다던가.
The Korean workers were detained for a week until the governments negotiated for them to return home to Korea. Kim is one of nearly 200 detainees who are now preparing to sue ICE. Among the allegations will be unlawful policing, racial profiling, human rights violations, excessive force, and unlawful arrest.
지금까지도 저희가 왜 그렇게 구금을 당했는지 당국에 대한 사과나 어떠한 해명도 없었고 그런 부분을 좀 바로 잡고자 소송을 진행을 하는 건이고 내 잘못은 없다라는 부분을 조금
South Korean companies sometimes send workers on short-term visas that operate in a gray zone.
We are sending a clear and unequivocal message that those who exploit our workforce, undermine our economy, and violate federal laws will be held accountable.
I can't wait for this guy to get his Nuremberg trial. Oh, this guy, take the stand. All right, buddy, here's you. And then we just play this clip. Here's you again, and then we play the previous clip. Anything you'd like to say for yourself? Great. Guilty next. Because there is no justification. There just isn't. There is no justification for what our country did to those workers who were here lawfully. Short-term visas exist for that reason specifically. Explicitly for that reason. To do short-term things. For work. I again, find it unbelievable that we still have diplomatic relations with any country at this point. And the fact that there are still foreign entities, foreign workers, foreign companies, diplomats, tourists, travelers, what have you, coming to America under this administration is shocking and scary. I have family in Europe. I have family in several parts of the world. And if I had the hankering to go see them, I am afraid that I would have trouble getting back into my own country, of which I served in the active duty military, and whom I have an honest-to-God citizenship with. I'm an American citizen and veteran, and I am afraid to leave my country because the coming back might result in ridiculous detention or treatment by this administration. Let alone if my family comes to visit from out of country. I can't imagine my little nieces being detained by ICE and being questioned about their loyalty to Trump. Because that's what we're doing. We are profiling, terrorizing, questioning, and detaining men, women, and children from every corner of the globe and interrogating them like they are active terrorists. So why would anybody want to come to this country? Why? Why would anybody come to America during this administration? That is my question, because you have either zero knowledge whatsoever of what's coming to America, more power to you, I guess, or you are just that breathtakingly in belief that you are the main character of the universe and this could never happen to you. Because I promise you, this guy never thought it could happen to him. And I'm fairly confident that everybody on this bus thought it would never happen to them. And then it did. And it continues to happen all across the country. So, this video is clearly stressing me out. So, let's move on.
In the world of big business, there is one woman who inspires great fear and awe.
I wanted to have you on a podcast, and Apple asked us not to do it.
The FTC's back in that role of torturing all the companies that America likes.
I do think corporate America's biggest enemy will now lead Mamdani's transition team. Okay, so we're going to learn about an influential person.
That Lina Khan is a person who is not helping America in her job and what she's doing.
Unlike public servants of the past 4 decades, Khan enters with a very different framework. She's more interested in analyzing who has too much power and who doesn't have enough. She's not fighting a partisan game. Instead, she's focused on something that she's had her eyes on since she was a teenager, waging battles against powerful, predatory multinational corporations that are exploiting working people.
You know, from an early age, I was interested in being a journalist. And one reason why I wanted to be a journalist was because at their best, they hold power to account.
Perhaps her biggest claim to fame is her battle with big tech, a battle she's waged since law school when she wrote a widely cited paper called Amazon's Antitrust Paradox. As the country's top antitrust enforcer, Khan has gone after Silicon Valley's biggest tech giants.
The Federal Trade Commission and 17 states are suing Amazon, claiming it operates an illegal monopoly.
Zuckerberg in court today for a hearing surrounding the FTC's antitrust suit against the company.
OpenAI is facing a new complaint filed with the FTC today over the company's popular ChatGPT product.
There is enormous opportunity here for a vibrant market, but we also see risk. We see risk of consolidation. We see risk of monopolization.
All of these actions have made Lina Khan a frequent target of this.
I like that. Thank God. Some good news. We got a tapper for our cabinet when you're president. Absolutely. And I'm glad you put this video on there because I was getting stressed. Lina Khan, folks. And here's the thing. She's absolutely right. Facebook, ChatGPT, Amazon. There's probably several other companies that are essentially monopolies in this country. And again, nothing is being prevented. Nothing is being held accountable. Nothing is being done about it because they're too big to fail. They're too big to go after. Well, then they're too big to exist. Ever thought of that? If they're too big to be held accountable, then they shouldn't exist. And if our government is too weak to go after a company, then our government is too weak or complicit. And that needs to be addressed as well. And that's the thing. That's why when we say fascism, the merger of the corporation and of the state, it's because we are seeing corporations dictate terms to the state and then put people from the corporation into the state and then dictate further terms. Like if that isn't the merger of corporation and state, then I don't know what is. Does New York City represent America as a whole in the eyes of Americans? Why are presidential and vice presidential candidates rarely from New York? I was going to say, New York City especially is quite indicative of the melting pot aspect of America and has about 5% of the nation's population. So yeah, that would be why it is an extremely high-profile focus for president and vice president. And most places in the country would still refer to or look at New York City when New York City is in the news. Good. That is how influential it is. But so is Los Angeles. That is another extremely large city in America where if things happen in Los Angeles, there are repercussions and ramifications across the entire United States. So, you know what's frustrating, though? We have a nice video about a great person, Lina Khan, and there's not much to talk about because it's great news. It's refreshing. It's wonderful. Here's a woman doing exactly what she should be doing, that she went after these bad people, and now she's on the transition team for Mamdani. That's great. That is fantastic. The only thing we can say is I hope there is more to come. I hope she continues her role, her momentum, and it starts impacting more things in the country and not just New York City. So it's just harder to talk about good news because you're just repeating yourself how great the news is, right? Whereas the dreary, you have to talk about the dreary, you have to condemn the dreary, and then you have to talk about how to overcome the dreary. There's so much more to talk about. Maybe we try this. Lina Khan needs to find, recruit, and train the next generation of Lina Khans across every other respective field. We need a Lina Khan in healthcare, in education, in finance, in engineering, in technology, in space, in health, social media, infrastructure, construction, right? We need a Lina Khan everywhere. And honestly, I hope she recognizes her own talent and her own success and her ability as a visionary, as a leader in her craft, to either inspire or find others and train them up. A lot of people who succeed on their own merits tend to not be able to share that information, that skill set, and pass that torch on to the next generation. And I truly hope Lina Khan is one of those who can. I really hope she is capable of doing it. So if there's anything that I can say about Lina Khan at all, is that I hope, I truly, desperately hope that she becomes one of the beacons of hope and support for the future of our country, right? I want to say things like leader of the revolution, or the campaign for change, or to go against this administration. But short of that, I feel like if she can get some great people under her wing there and get them on her level or close to it, how much good could she and her team accomplish, right? Mamdani notwithstanding, it's just, we need more Lina Khans in the world, and significantly less Steve Bannon's, Trump's, Vance's, and whoever that ICE agent person was. We need far more Lina Khans. I'm glad that she's leading Mamdani's team. Hopefully she can tame the shit lips. Usually in other countries, if you lead the most famous city, you get a golden ticket to lead nationally. But I don't see that with New York. It has happened in New York, but it's obviously not a guarantee. But many New York City mayors do quite often run for president. Bloomberg was one. I think de Blasio would have, except he had too many scandals. And Giuliani ended up supporting Trump instead. So, like, it's not unheard of that New York City mayors end up going on a national track. Oh, okay. So we had our bit of good news. I hope everybody has drank that in and got re-energized from it, because now we have one of the most dystopian clips, honestly, that I have ever seen, and we have just talked about some pretty dystopian stuff today.
This is wild. Virtual fast food workers from the Philippines are being hired for $3 an hour as opposed to New York's minimum wage of $16 per hour. You could hire 5 virtual workers for the price of 1 in-person worker. So I went in person to take a look for myself. A virtual worker who was literally on a Zoom conference call greeted me as I approached a self-service kiosk located outside a restaurant. Once I placed my order, the virtual worker instructed me to go inside the restaurant to wait for my order to be picked up. And to my surprise, there was another camera pointing to the entrance of the restaurant, which the same virtual worker was also greeting. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that this is a smart move and more restaurants should be adopting this?
The conservative majority.
No.
This is wild.
Quite frankly, I find it deeply disturbing. First of all, doesn't that violate both local, national, state law, like the wage laws, the regular wage laws? And doesn't that also violate foreign labor laws? Doesn't that violate both of them at the same time? Because you are hiring a foreign worker without giving them a visa because they're physically not coming to America, but you are also not paying them minimum wage in America, even though they are working to represent in America. Like, that to me is pretty, I mean, if that's not wage theft, and if that's not violating the laws of our country on both sides of the aisle, then I really don't know what is. And the fact that it's the Philippines, another highly exploited country that is poor due to global trade decisions and machinations from like the IMF, is also exploitative, which is, again, a crime under the Geneva Conventions for Human Rights. So, there is no part of this story that is anything short of a crime. Like, it is a crime. From start to finish, it is criminal. And it also goes to show just how little industries value human beings as a whole. And that if they could replace every single human being with machines, they would. I'm actually kind of surprised those aren't AI chatbots with like visual whatever, right? I'm actually surprised because that's the next step. If corporations could replace all human beings in their workforce with robots or AI, they would. But there's the problem. We don't have an economy that allows for people not to have jobs, and companies continue to go out of their way to find ways to reduce jobs, causing an increased crisis of joblessness or working poor for the remaining jobs that are left. So no, this needs to be shut down. This needs to be shut down. The owner of the restaurant needs to be charged with violating federal and national labor laws, and probably also charged with exploitation of labor, because this is like one small step away from actual trafficking efforts. This is. That's why capitalism is unsustainable. To put it lightly, to put it mildly, that is the gentlest thing that could be said about this.
The conservative majority Supreme Court Thursday allowed the Trump administration to temporarily enforce a discriminatory passport policy against transgender, non-binary, and intersex people.
The Supreme Court of the United States of America temporarily allowed the President of the United States of America to violate the 14th Amendment. That's the story. That's the headline. So, Amy, fill us in some more.
But while litigation in the case, Trump continues through the lower courts. After the decision, Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote on X, quote, "Attorneys at the Justice Department just secured our 24th victory at the Supreme Court's emergency docket. Today's stay allows the government..."
24th. How many presidencies can say that they have been sued by or stopped by, challenged by the Supreme Court and won 24 times? How many administrations can say that? I'm going to go with 0. Secondly, how many administrations have been challenged by the Supreme Court because they were flagrantly disregarding the Supreme Court? And I think there's several. I think Andrew Jackson was one of them, actually. I think Andrew Jackson was one of the progenitors of flouting the Constitution. But I can't come up with too many other names other than Andrew Jackson, Trump. Like, the level of just collusion between the branches that are supposed to be checks and balances to power is indicative of an actual coup happening in everything but name. Because the historians, kids in school 30, 40 years from now, assuming we haven't gone through thermonuclear war or been devastated by climate change, kids are going to learn about American politics during this period and talking about how this was a long-term coup d'etat being orchestrated and perpetuated by Trump and his allies. There is no historical definition and explanation for what is happening right now in our time other than a coup d'etat. Right, how is that an emergency? Right, how is discriminating against trans people an emergency? How is that something that we need to worry about? How does trans people's passports affect our lives? Again, and how does violating the 14th Amendment get upheld by the Supreme Court? So yeah,
To require citizens to list their biological sex on their passport. In other words, there are two sexes, and our attorneys will continue fighting for that simple truth, Bondi said. Going back to 1992, the State Department's allowed for trans Americans to update their sex designations, and an X marker was added under the Biden administration. LGBTQ plus advocates have argued this policy will expose trans and intersex people to real danger while traveling. The ACLU has successfully won in the lower courts, arguing the policy is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. The Trump administration has appealed. Thursday's order granting a stay on the lower court ruling for a temporary injunction made no mention of potential harm to plaintiffs. In their unsigned decision, the conservative majority wrote, quote, displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, the government's merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment, unquote. In a scathing dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said, quote, the documented real-world harms to these plaintiffs obviously outweigh the government's unexplained and inexplicable interest in immediate implementation of the passport policy, she said, and went on to say her colleagues had, quote, once again paved the way for the immediate infliction of injury without adequate or really any justification, unquote.
Right. I mean, there's nothing to really add is the problem. The point is control. The point is manipulation. The point is to spread fear and doubt and concern amongst the most vulnerable groups in our country. And shockingly, Trump decided to attack the transgender community first, which is exactly what Hitler did. Then Trump went after the immigrants, which is exactly what Hitler did. The only thing stopping Trump from going after the Jewish population is the fact that Israel claims ownership over Israeli identity, and therefore to go after Jewish folks would be violating Israel's identity. And that's the one thing we have gone out of our way to prevent. Again, you can go to jail for condemning Israel, but you can condemn America as much as you want, although he did later on also write a neo for that too. So it's not even parallels what this administration is doing compared to the Nazis. It is literally, it's not parallel. It's not like they did this and we're doing something similar but different. We are doing the same things in the same order. The exact same order. It's just taking us months instead of weeks to accomplish.
For more, we're joined by Arlie Christian, Senior Policy Counsel of the ACLU in Washington, D.C. Welcome to Democracy Now! Talk about the significance of this Supreme Court ruling and what happens next.
Thank you, Amy, so much for having us here. And really, this decision by the Supreme Court, this is an emergency stay. As you mentioned, the Supreme Court has decided that the government can move forward in implementing this harmful discriminatory policy that requires a sex assigned at birth on your original birth certificate to be printed on passports. And the harm is quite immediate, right? We have had a preliminary injunction in place in this case since April, and that has prevented the federal government from changing their 33-year-old policy, as you mentioned, of allowing people to have a passport that reflects who they are. For now, the Supreme Court has stayed that injunction. So now the federal government will be moving forward with printing passports that do not reflect who an individual is. Really harmful for the moment, but the fight is not over. We are still in the courts. We are still in the First Circuit looking at this injunction. We are still with the district court looking at the actual merits of the case, which were not considered in this Supreme Court stay.
What happens to people, for example, who have X on their passport right now?
Yeah, so Amy, this decision and the actions of the federal government are causing chaos, panic, confusion among the trans, intersex, non-binary communities across the country. The fact of the matter is, if you have a validly issued passport with an M, an F, or an X, you are eligible to travel with that passport. That is, the State Department said that even when they reversed the policy back in January, and that continues to be the case. However, there have been lots of actions that have scared people, and this stay is one of them. We are still working with the government's lawyers to find out what will happen to the passports that were correctly issued during the course of this injunction, and people are scared about that. And generally speaking, the harm and the targeting of this policy on towards intersex, non-binary, and trans people is terrifying. It makes it very scary to travel, to trust that you'll be able to get through security, that you'll be able to get on your flight, things that every person in the United States should not have to worry about. We all deserve the right to travel freely with dignity, with respect, as exactly who we are. That is something
guaranteed in the Constitution, the right to travel. Again, the terror and the fear and the discrimination and this, that, and the other, that is the purpose behind all of these various activities, right? But it doesn't change the fact that by engaging in these acts of terror and fear against the population of our country, that those should have immediate repercussions to the people committing the crime of fear and terror to people of our country. And the fact that this continues on, unabated, unaccounted for, just no accountability any which way, while people are literally in fear of being able to travel and come back to their country without being persecuted, is shocking. And it doesn't matter if you're not trans, or it doesn't matter if you think transgenderism is a mental health problem. If the government can do this to trans people, they can do this to you. And that is the point that is being made. And not enough people are recognizing how truly disturbing this is.
That the administration is attacking right now.
Last night, I had a chance to speak with Laverne Cox after a showing of the new documentary called Heightened Scrutiny. Laverne Cox is the actress and trans activist. I asked her to respond to the Supreme Court's ruling.
What I think is really important for me to remember, and for all my trans siblings out there to remember, is that the government cannot tell us who we are, and they will never be the arbiter of our identities. No matter what they say about our ID documents, we are still who we are, and we will find a way to be ourselves no matter what we must, because living a lie, trying to be someone else, is death. It's an eternal death. So no matter what the government says or decrees, we will continue to be ourselves, our beautiful anointed selves, because trans is beautiful, because trans rights are human rights, and because trans people are anointed.
Trans actress Laverne Cox. The ACLU case stems from an executive order signed by President Trump in January that
honestly, again, nothing. Laverne was 100% correct. Trans rights are human rights, and to not live in your own truth is death. Like, many people identify as Christian and they make that their entire identity. Or I'm a white male and that's my entire identity. Or I'm a lesbian and that's my entire identity, right? Now imagine the government comes up to you and says, you are not that anymore. You are what we tell you you are. You cannot be anything other than white cis male. But I'm a woman. No, you are a white cis male. I literally have 2 X chromosomes, assigned female at birth, like the whole 9 yards. No, we are the government. You are a white cis male. I am literally a black woman. Literally a black woman. Cannot change that no matter what you say. I cannot be a white man. Too bad. That is now what's happening. Obviously, that's an extreme caricature example, but that is what is happening. The government is telling you, mandating you by legality, making it a legal issue where you could face consequences, up to and including not being able to travel and potentially jail time for ignoring this identity thing. Who and what you can be, what you are allowed to be. Okay? That is regressive, for one, and authoritarian for two. And if they can say that to one demographic, they can and will say it to about all other demographics. Just like the white supremacy and the immigration policy, the racial profiling. That is officially a thing. If you are not white, you are largely not targeted. Except we're even targeting Europeans in America as well who are travelers, especially if they don't support Trump. Nobody is safe if anybody isn't safe. If one group, one person can be persecuted by the government, everybody can, because it's just a matter of finding the justification. And that is the important takeaway from the Supreme Court allowing Trump to discriminate against trans people on the passport or otherwise. That is the threat. What is done to one can be done to all. We can talk about the poem. First they came for the trans, and I said nothing. Then they came for the dissenters, and I said nothing. Then they came for the communists, and I said nothing. And then they came for me, and I pled for help, and I was alone. We can do this all day. The more this administration gets away with, the less secure we become as a people. And our options become extremely limited as to how we can resist the corruption and brutality of this administration. All right, so we're entering into our final hour of the day.
A lot of the things that give New Yorkers concern is especially happening in our subway system. And these are not incidents that might necessarily be categorized in CompStat or as a crime, but they are moments that showcase a mental health crisis, a homelessness crisis. And we have asked police officers to be the ones responsible and to respond to that, even though these are the same officers who signed up to respond to shootings, to respond to murders, to respond to serious crimes across our city. So our vision for a Department of Community Safety, the DCS, is that we would have teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers that we deploy to the 100 stations with the highest levels of mental health crises to respond to those incidents and get those New Yorkers out of the subway system and to the services that they actually need. We have put together a proposal for the entirety of this department that puts the cost at about $1 billion for this new department.
How many people would you be able to find them?
We are confident of our ability to find them because we know that if you actually pay people what they're worth for this job, there are so many who are interested in responding. And we have the benefit of learning from the model in Oregon, where they decoupled mental health response from the police department, and they found they were able to respond to more than 90% of those calls without police involvement. You always could call upon them, but knowing that the first instinct would be able to respond to them without asking the police to do so, it changed their nature.
I don't like how quickly that because this next video is apparently going to be infuriating. One thing, I either A, didn't know or forgot that Oregon did pilot such a program, which is impressive because when you think of these kinds of programs, I guess Oregon would come to mind, right? Portland, Oregon, right? So Oregon's a pretty blue state, but nobody ever talks about this, which is crazy that Mamdani actually got it on his radar. And the fact that they are now going to model something similar in New York City. I mean, that's obviously exactly what we need. We need to defund the police and create these kinds of programs which actually help citizens in need. This is exactly the right thing to do. So, again, I have said on this stream, on social media, and in person, Zohran Mamdani, I take with a grain of salt. He is saying a lot of good things that I personally agree with, and that I hope he accomplishes. But he also turns around and walks some of it back. But he is getting a really strong transition team, so there is a lot of opportunity for him to do a lot of good. I don't care if he doesn't meet every single one of his promises. What I do care is if he changes his positions and platform to acquiesce to, like, neoliberalism or something, right? Anyway, this is great. I think more cities should look into this. Columbus should look into this. Los Angeles should look into this. Every major city in America should have a program like this. And the more this becomes normal and the more this becomes accepted in the country, the less of a stranglehold law enforcement will have over every municipality in the country. And that will help, I hope, demilitarize us as a country and as a society. Because the only reason why we are just goose-stepping into fascism and a police state at that is because of the stranglehold that law enforcement and the military has on our country and our budget, right? Most of our funding, half of our funding at every level of government, local, state, county, and federal, goes to some form of policing or military. And if we could start creating programs that divest, that take away that military spending and direct it towards social support, I think we will start to improve as a country and as a society that focuses on empathy and support rather than punishment or surveillance, for that matter. So, speaking of which, the police state, we have 3 short videos that are probably going to be viewer discretion is advised.
I'm not touching the car. Leave me alone. Look what they're doing. It's sneezing. No. Stop. Document.
That's fine. Back up.
This is my wife. She's having a seizure. They're trying to rip the baby out of her hand. She's having a seizure.
Back up. Oh my God, don't touch me.
Pittsburgh, Massachusetts. This is what's going on this morning. Stop yelling at her. Stop yelling at her because you feel insecure.
Video here of an ICE officer.
Again, advocating for violence is not something we can do on this platform, and it's not something I actually particularly want to encourage people to do. But citizens' arrest, citizen intervention from crimes being committed by officers abusing their power, unlawful arrests, again, the chaos, the terror, the fear is the point. And what this administration is hoping for is that citizens get angry and get involved and or violent and physical with agents so that they can use even more force in the future. The problem with constant escalation is that the only inevitable outcome is violence. Armed violence. So I don't know what the correct answer is. I'm not Malcolm X. I'm not Martin Luther K. I'm not Che Guevara. I am not those people. I don't have the solution to this problem because my solution to this problem is one that I can't air on stream. Or advocate for on stream, I should say. So, all I can say is if you witness these things, act on your conscience and record. And hopefully the human rights crisis that is occurring on our soil, in our cities, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our homes, hopefully the atrocities that are happening with enough visibility will spark some amount of empathy in our society as a whole to start pushing back against this brazen terrorism, this unprecedented wave of state-sponsored terrorism taking place in our city streets.
Officer with his gun drawn and interacting with a Fullerton police officer in Santa Ana Sunday has been circulating online, with some commenting that a Fullerton police officer was assisting in an ICE operation. Fullerton PD now setting the record straight, saying, quote, the Fullerton Police Department has not and will not participate in immigration enforcement efforts, end quote. We've now learned that ICE officer had pulled over at the intersection of Santa Ana Boulevard and Shelton Street. He then got out of his vehicle with his gun drawn to confront a woman who had reportedly been following his SUV and recording him. When the Fullerton officer saw the armed man in the street, he got out of his cruiser, and the armed man identified himself as an ICE agent. The Fullerton officer confirmed to the ICE agent that he could not assist with someone following him or video recording him, as no crime had been occurred. Again, this was not a crime, what that woman was accused of doing. The woman who had been recording drove off, and shortly after, so did the ICE agent and the Fullerton officer.
So there we have confirmation that if you record agents, that isn't a crime. If you're following agents, that is also not a crime. And yet these agents turn around and use lethal force, or threaten to use lethal force, against civilians exercising their rights. Again, if you're going to do something like that, never do it alone, and be prepared for consequences up to and including your life being in danger. Hopefully, with more of these stories, with more of these videos becoming viral and circulating in the news and the media and on social media, hopefully enough social awareness comes out to show that this is just straight up domestic terrorism. That this is lawlessness guised as security. And hopefully, public opinion starts to rapidly change because of it.
Nice is coming. Get your pussy. You are lying! Oh, he pointed a gun at me! He pointed a gun at us! What the He pointed a gun! Yeah, he put the gun at us! What the
Again, police were there. The police were protecting the agents conducting acts of terrorism on city streets. The ICE agent was brandishing a weapon at protesters, which is a crime. Brandishing a weapon is 100% a crime. So, what is brandishing a firearm? Is the act of displaying or showing a gun in a threatening or aggressive manner toward another individual. This does not necessarily mean pointing the gun directly at someone, but rather any intentional display of the weapon to intimidate or instill fear in others. It is important to note that brandishing a firearm can occur in both public places and private settings. Legal repercussions. Brandishing a firearm is typically classified as a criminal offense and is punishable by law. The severity of the penalties varies depending on the jurisdiction and circumstances. In general, individuals convicted of brandishing face charges ranging from misdemeanors to felonies, which can result in fines, probation, jail time, and even loss of gun ownership rights. Furthermore, brandishing a firearm can escalate into more serious charges if threats are made or if there is evidence of intent to harm others. That is a fucking crime. Clear as day crime. That was caught on camera by this piece of shit, who looks to be of some sort of Asian descent, which is even crazier because ICE literally terrorized hundreds of Asian, South Korean employees. And we have Asian Americans, Latin Americans, Black Americans, probably have Muslim Americans. We probably have every denomination dash Americans as ICE agents terrorizing their same fellow demographic. It would be like if there were Jewish individuals as part of the SS manning the concentration camps. Have I submitted my paperwork to run for president in 2028? First, we're going to try for Congress. We're going to try for Congress in 2026 first. And we're going to see how that goes. And assuming it goes well, because we have every indication to believe that it will, we will probably immediately file paperwork for president. The downside for that is it takes about $500,000 to file in all 50 states, because some states require a ridiculously high fee, Texas being one of them, and that fee being around $25,000. And I think it was Alabama also was something around $15,000 to $20,000. So it is pretty egregious getting on the ballot for president throughout the several states. Yeah, Texas was $50,000 if you were a Democrat. It was $25,000 if you were a Republican. And yes, it was discriminatory against Republicans versus Democrats. Filing fees, brother. Somebody has to count them and verify that the paperwork is done correctly. Ipso factum ergo, filing fees. Should they be $50,000? No, they shouldn't be expensive in the slightest, but that's just how that works, unfortunately. Our final 30 minutes.
President Donald Trump's sweeping immigration crackdown has intensified across U.S. cities, with federal agents expanding operations and clashing with communities. But in Chicago, the campaign took a disturbing turn when a family, including a 1-year-old girl, was pepper sprayed by Border Patrol agents during a weekend operation. The incident unfolded last Saturday morning in a parking lot in Cicero.
Oh, is this the
just
gentleman who
outside
ended
the city's
up having
Little
a
Village
seizure?
neighborhood? Rafael Verza said he and his wife were driving with their daughter, Ariana, to buy groceries when they noticed a helicopter overhead and people blowing whistles, a common warning that immigration agents were nearby. Now attempting to leave the area, Verza said a dark-colored pickup truck drove past and someone inside sprayed a chemical irritant directly into the car. And his 1-year-old daughter sitting in the back seat inhaled the gas.
He started spraying from the front of the car towards the back. Basically, I got sprayed all over my face. I'm asthmatic, so the moment it hit me, I couldn't breathe. My daughter was also trying to open her eyes. She was also struggling to breathe.
The video that's now gone viral shows Verza's wife crying out as she films the aftermath, her baby crying as bystanders help the family flush their eyes with bottled water.
All four were struggling to breathe, their faces burning from pepper spray. They weren't protesting. They were just shopping.
Now the Department of Homeland Security
Evidently, these people were just driving, minding their own business, when ICE agents took it upon themselves to drive by and just arbitrarily pepper spray the driver and caught their 1-year-old daughter in the face with it as well. Nuremberg-style trials are honestly, they are gonna... there's going to be a lot of retribution in those trials. And I don't think it's going to be enough to make up for the harm, the terror, the fear, the destruction of these communities that has been transpiring. And I truly do not believe that even if these trials ended up providing the death penalty to some of these agents, I don't think that would be enough. Because being this cruel, this malevolent, this blatantly, willfully harmful, evil and malevolent doesn't even begin to describe the kind of person that would pepper spray a 1-year-old or try and tear a screaming, distraught mother from her child or arrest a daycare worker in front of the children and parents. You have to be one sick motherfucker to do that. And I honestly don't know what kind of punishment would equal some sort of justice for that kind of behavior, but this can't be it. Like I'm shaking. I'm holding my hands because I'm shaking with rage after that one. That one was a bit much for me. That is not the America that we need to be advocating for. This is, if you support this, if you defend this, you are a traitor to humanity. As far as I'm concerned, you have divested yourself of anything resembling empathy and humanity. If you can justify a 1-year-old getting pepper sprayed or ICE agents terrorizing people just based on the color of their skin, I got nothing for you. I don't think you should be in this country. I don't think you should be on this planet. I think hateful people like that just do not deserve a place in society, because they are clearly themselves not wanting to be a part of a society. They want to be a part of whatever monstrosity of life and semblance of society that they picture. And if that's what they want, they can go literally anywhere else. They can go anywhere else under the sun, but I don't want them here. I will take every single immigrant at our border and every single immigrant within our borders over any single one of those individuals every single day of the week. Oh, but what about the criminals? What about the violent Tren de la Gras folks? Okay, so we send them to prison. Yeah, they've committed crimes, and it would take them committing a crime and getting caught to be sent to prison, but then they're taken care of. They are no longer a threat. They are no longer a problem. That is a very small price to pay to ensure that millions of immigrants are not living in fear and being treated like vermin and less than human by federal agents. My tax dollars should not be spent on terrorizing people on my own country's ground, let alone overseas, but today's Taco Tuesday. So, this video might be marginally good. Let's find out.
Historically, it has been extremely difficult to...
SCOTUS decision could hold federal agents accountable amid operations in Chicago. Let's hope this one's better than the video we just watched.
Sue the federal government if you believe your rights were violated. But now all that could change because of a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision.
What do you feel for those families in that South Shore raid?
Oh, that was horrible.
The federal raid on this 130-unit apartment building at 75th and South Shore in September has led to a congressional investigation by the Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees.
They had little children and old people outside and in handcuffs.
You're just raiding the whole building. Federal agents from the FBI, ATF, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection using flashbang grenades and battering rams, trampled through these apartments.
Ridiculous.
In this October 6th letter to Department of Homeland Security Director Kristi Noem and Attorney General Pamela Bondi, ranking Democrats accuse federal agents of violence against innocent people, including children swept up and taken away wearing little clothing. In cell phone video, you can see this one wrapped in a blanket.
When that's a little girl, and she's out here damn near naked.
Just imagine the sort of traumatic experience that it is to have your door blown open in the middle of the night or in the very early morning. And now imagine that you're 4 or 5 years old and you can't even really process what's going on, even in the aftermath.
Patrick Giacomo is a lawyer for the Institute for Justice, a nonprofit which provides legal support for people accusing the federal government of abusing constitutional rights.
If you were harmed by a federal officer, you can do something about that now.
Giacomo's expecting a tidal wave of lawsuits nationwide against federal agents, and not just for raids like what happened in South Shore, but also lawsuits filed by U.S. citizens and non-citizens in communities impacted the most by federal agents over the last several months for allegations of excessive force, wrongful arrest, wrongful detention, and other injuries. What's making all this possible? Giacomo points to a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision about another federal raid. The case at the center, his client, Trina Martin, and what happened at her home that you're seeing in this police body camera footage.
You feel like there needs to be accountability?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Trina Martin didn't live in the South Shore building, but she did live through a similar kind of nightmare in 2017.
Can you still see that moment?
Oh, God, yes. I still see the moment, and I still see what it's done to my son.
Her home was also raided by heavily armed federal agents with the FBI.
What do they do to your home? What do they do to your family?
They forced their way into my home about 4 o'clock in the morning, threw in flashbang grenade bombs, had us all surrounded with assault rifles in our face. My son was in the room by himself with just looking into a barrel of a gun.
Her son, Gabe, was only 7 at the time.
I could just hear my son calling my name, just Mom, 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 and that sound will always stay with me.
But the feds had the wrong home. They weren't even on the right street. The federal agent in charge said his GPS device sent him to the wrong house.
So they totally got it wrong.
Totally got it wrong.
And even though they raided the wrong home, attorneys representing the FBI in court argued the feds were immune from being sued.
In the Martin case, these officers and the United States really were completely immunized from any sort of accountability or liability for the harms that they created.
People who believe they've been harmed.
Okay, this video is not better than the previous video. Other than to say the fact that you can now sue the federal government if they cause you harm. So you know what? If you're going to go to these protests, if you're going to videotape ICE agents, and if you're going to do all these things, maybe the pathway forward is class action lawsuits against the FBI, the ICE, Department of Homeland Security, and every other organization that's working with ICE, conducting these appalling activities in the United States of America. Since the Supreme Court is allowing the lawsuits to go forward, that class action could finally encompass the raids at the farms, but also the raids at this building and the raids that have been occurring all over the place. The kids that got that pepper sprayed and all these other incidents could be all lumped into one class action lawsuit that could devastate these budgets of these federal agencies and hopefully force the administration to change its policies with regards to these agencies. It's, dangerous because I think we're weeks or months away from federal agents opening fire on citizens. I think we are weeks or months away from federal agents, these ICE officers, from firing upon civilians who are videotaping or following them. And I think that might finally start kickstarting public opinion to, you know, pay attention and give a shit. But if we can maybe start and kickstart a class action lawsuit against them, that they may very well be one method that we can use to fight against them. And this lady that was the victim, she's obviously suing them on her own behalf, but maybe it can turn into a class action. Maybe there's a plucky lawyer that puts that bug in her ear and she runs with it. So, okay. 20 minutes left, and I've only been severely challenged with the ability to control my rage twice in the past 10 minutes. No big deal. Today's been a stream. So let's try to do
And tonight's Future of Everything. It's been a few days since we've
or something at least not intense. Let's do the alien conspiracy theory comment.
Talked about our favorite interstellar object, 3i Atlas, and yes, we've got some updates. Check out these new images that show 3i Atlas in a whole new light. What's going on with this situation? What are these jets? Is it streaming out? What is all this? Is it breaking up after possibly going behind our sun? A little confusing because this all comes after last week images showed the object with no tail. Weird. So how did the object go from an anti-tail to a no tail to an anti-tail to whatever it is that we are now seeing? Let's get straight over to Harvard astronomer Professor Avi Loeb, expert on all things interstellar. Professor, great to see you. So is this a breakup of 3i Atlas? What does this all mean here?
Well, thanks for having me. We see more than 7 jets that are tightly collimated coming out of this object. And of course, there are 2 possibilities that we considered all along, that these jets are naturally produced out of ice on the surface of a rock. And the second possibility is that they might be thrusters on the technological spacecraft. And so how do we tell the difference? Well, if it's a natural object, then we know the temperature on the surface of a rock, given its distance from the sun, and that gives the characteristic speed of any volatiles that get sublimated and ejected from those pockets of ice. And so knowing the speed, we can see how far these jets go into the solar wind. We know the properties of the solar wind, and these jets appear to be, some of them in the direction of the sun, and they go 1 million kilometers away from the object. So knowing the properties, the speed and the density of the solar wind, we can infer how much mass is being carried by these jets. And I did the calculation and I found of the order of 5 billion tons of material. Now we ask, okay, how much energy is needed to sublimate ice?
Okay. So this physicist is going deep into Professor Ronan territory. So what I do like that he was cheeky about it, though, saying, hey, how do we know if they're thrusters or if it's a comet tail? So apparently, if the comet tail has a bunch of mass behind it, 5 billion tons, it's a comet and not thrusters. But that would also be, 5 billion tons. That's gotta be a lot of, like, what scale is 5 billion tons? Nah, that just gave me, yeah. How big is 5 billion tons? Okay. How much concrete would 5 billion tons take up? cubic meters, or 2.2 billion cubic yards, which is still not a good visual. I'm gonna guess it's something on the order of like a small city. Let's just go with that. It's something on the order of a small city. I hope the ETs come down here and clean house. I, for one, will welcome our new alien overlords. Yeah, honestly, even at the risk of getting probed, it is a far cry better than what we're dealing with today. I'm doing dances to attract the aliens. Oh, is that what all those shiny lights were?
With such a large mass? And the answer is, well, if it's carbon dioxide, which is easiest to sublimate, I mean, water takes more energy, but carbon dioxide requires a surface area of an object that is 20 kilometers in diameter, much bigger than we estimated for the actual nucleus of 3I Atlas based on the Hubble image that was obtained back in July. So what does it mean? It means that in the natural case, the object might have broken into pieces so that the sum of the areas of all the pieces add up to the area that is required. So, and there should be tens of those pieces, maybe hundreds. And we don't have a good enough image yet to figure out if there are pieces. They would get separated by the tidal force of the sun as we move into the next few weeks. However, if it's a technological object, and we're talking about technological thrusters, those usually eject gas at a much higher speed. Rockets eject gas at 10 times faster speed than expected for volatiles on the surface of a comet, and the ion thrusters go up to 100 times the speed of those.
Wait, how do we know the thrust of an ion thruster? Do we have ion thrusters? Do we... Have we developed ion thruster capabilities? Okay, well then I guess we're thinking of something that isn't science fiction. Electric propulsion used for spacecraft. Creates a cloud of positive ions from a neutral gas by ionizing it. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky had the first concept of it in 1911. And a working ion thruster was built in 1959. All right, then. Okie dokie.
Natural, pockets of ice. And so we would expect much less mass to be carried in these jets at much higher speed in the case of a technological object. And the coming weeks will tell us the answer, because if this object is broken up, we will see the pieces. We would see slow-moving jets with a lot of mass in them. On the other hand, if it's a technological object, very fast jets with much less material in them, and the object maintains its integrity as it moves along.
I know is the date that I've got circled. That's supposed to be when we get the clearest images of 3I Atlas, and yet it does seem like, every day we're seeing more and more imagery from Earth and from beyond of 3I Atlas. Do you expect any surprises before then? And look, we talk a lot. Like, you and I are basically becoming, best friends on my phone here. I have sensed like a little bit of a tone shift from you. I might be reading into it. Are you worried at all as this thing gets a little bit closer, or do you still think that this is most likely natural?
No, I'm just waiting for the evidence to come in, and whatever it is, that's the fun of doing science, that we should be guided by data. So science, the foundation of science is the curiosity, the humility to learn. It's a learning experience, work in progress. And it's very different than the arrogance of expertise, where based on past knowledge, you assume that you can forecast what nature would reveal. And so let's just wait a few more weeks. We'll figure it out. And let's hope that there will be no gifts from this object for the holidays on Earth. If it's a natural object, there is nothing to worry about. Don't lose any sleep for now until we figure out, that it might be technological. In that case, I would start worrying, yes.
Don't Look Up, the movie. Coming to you in a few weeks. The fact, though, that he was pretty, I would say, blasé on this is what it would look like if it was, in fact, a thruster or of a technological nature. It's like, it could be technological. If it is, this is what to look for. Or if it's natural, this is what... That's kind of... I kind of like that. So, don't read that? Okay. But yeah, no. So, good news, I guess. Good news if it isn't a thruster, I suppose. Let's see, there's 2 more videos here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. The right's secret plan to help billionaires buy elections. That's the headline of a recent article by our next guest, David Sirota, editor-in-chief of The Lever. In the article, David writes about how 2 upcoming Supreme Court cases could turn the country into what he calls a kleptocracy. The article's based on Sirota's new book, Master Plan, the hidden plot to legalize corruption in America. David's also has a new piece in The Nation on the New York mayoral race, the real lesson from Zohran Mamdani's ascent. David Sirota, welcome back to Democracy Now! Why don't you start off by talking about how you define the master plan? We talked to you when you did the series of podcasts on it, the hidden plot to legalize corruption in America.
So we're immersed in corruption. You see it in the headlines every day. And I think there's this perception that this is a natural course of events in the sense of it's a force of nature. But what we unearth in the book, for the first time really ever, is the secret plan to make this kind of corruption that we're immersed in legal. A plan hatched in the early 1970s to begin deregulating the campaign finance system and narrowing and making essentially unenforceable the anti-bribery laws in America. It started with the Powell memo. There was a lot of organizing. This memo written by a soon-to-be Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell, who urged a corporate investment and an oligarch investment in politics and media, because he was afraid, and corporate America was afraid, of the rising tide of consumer protection laws and the like. And that out of that movement in the early 1970s came the movement to create court rulings and legal precedents equating money in politics, not with corruption, but with constitutionally protected speech, giving corporations those constitutional rights to spend in elections and buy elections, ultimately culminating in Citizens United. Meanwhile, a series of court rulings starting in the mid-2010s to overturn corruption convictions, to narrow the definition of bribery, leading up to now, as you alluded to in the intro, 2 cases at the Supreme Court, one spearheaded by Vice President J.D. Vance, to eliminate what was left of campaign finance restrictions after Citizens United, and to further reduce the definition of bribery to make essentially quid pro quo transactions in politics legal. This is all part of a plan by a corporate movement that sees democracy, the government providing what people want, sees that as a threat and wants to turn the democracy from a one vote kind of democracy into a $1 kind of democracy where money is the decider.
And I would argue that we're already in that. I mean, right now, presently, at this very moment, 11/11/2025, we are literally seeing quid pro quo happening from the stupid ballroom. We are seeing the fact that Elon Musk invested $100 million in the Trump campaign, got involved with the voting machines, and then got a cabinet position for a time. So, and then all of Musk's companies being fully integrated into the federal government's like usability infrastructure, right? So I would argue that's already happening, and nobody's being prosecuted in the first place because this administration is obviously not going to check itself. The Supreme Court is colluding, and Congress is currently red. So I don't really... I guess the only thing that is left is just to do the paperwork, I guess, and that's what it sounds like he's uncovering, is that this has been, from the 1970s, a plot to get this paperwork written. And sure enough, the end of the Jimmy Carter administration, the first government shutdown, Reagan administration, and everything going topsy-turvy, I think there is merit to what he's saying, 100%. Obviously, I'm not going to question David Sciaretta. I know he is a very... Or Sciarota, sorry, saw his name wrong. I get that he is a subject matter expert in politics and like these types of deals. Like I'm not questioning the veracity of it. I'm saying is it's very believable. It's very expected from what is currently happening, and it would be the next natural step to be taken by this administration or a similar mind set administration to ensure that there can't be any consequences, even if accountability would finally rear its ugly head, right? Because if the Democrats were to finally grow a spine and try and charge Trump right now, they could. And that's half the battle, is that they could and should, but they're not. But there might come a point in the very near future where even if they could, it won't matter because it's no longer a crime. And what's worse is that laws like that are retroactive. So even if bribery laws were different 5 years ago, and you committed the crime 5 years ago, if the bribery law changed this year, all of a sudden you're free to go. And that's the biggest issue with these antitrust and bribery laws, is because they make them retroactive. For the obvious reason, they don't want to be hemmed up because of something they did 10, 20 years ago. They want to make sure that they're scot-free now. So, I definitely do not doubt in the slightest that that is what's happening. That court case is not one that we have covered, though. This is the first I'm hearing of it, so maybe we can cover that on Thursday. We can dig that court case out and make sure to cover it, because, again, we already have the erosion of the three branches. We already have the erosion of the Supreme Court. We have the erosion of Congress. We have the establishment of a secret police. We have the erosion of the 14th Amendment and due process. Like, why not have erosion of antitrust and bribery laws to solidify the corporate takeover of this country? Why not? Because that is the next natural step. The Dems were waiting until after the election to cave, and they made sure that the 8 votes came from senators not seeking re-election or not up for re-election. It was obviously orchestrated. Yep, it is absolutely a game to these people. Team Red fights for hunger, then says it's not their fault they're hungry. Right, because propaganda, misinformation, and lies only requires money to facilitate. And if you can have infinite money, then no big deal, right? Which is crazy, because then they're getting to the point where you no longer have to even file for donations. So at that point, even if foreign influence in politics happens, they're trying to get rid of all the laws that would even track it and be able to hold that accountable. So maybe I need to go find me a sugar mama from Costa Rica or so. I don't know where sugar mamas that are rich hang out, but I might have to figure that one out and see if I can't get sponsored for Congress, because evidently our country is trying to make money be free speech and not be questioned. So, you know, if they're going to play corrupt little games, then we may as well play by their same rules and use it against them. If she had a hot sister, send her your way. I'll keep that in mind, Pop. So, on that note, I think that's at least a lighthearted way to end the stream for a change. Sorry that I got a little out of pocket earlier. Those were 2 back-to-back videos that I probably should not have watched back-to-back. Now we know. So, once again, actually, wait, it's this screen. Once again, thank you all for joining us on stream. Thank you for participating in chat, liking, sharing, following, letting your friends and family and neighbors know. Spread the word. The more people we have, the more word we can spread, the bigger our platform that we can build, and the more we can do about the atrocities happening in our times. So with that, we will be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. sharp. I look forward to seeing you there. We'll be talking about world policies and news and what we can do about that. So, everybody, have a great rest of your night. Samuel Ronan, your president, out.